Welcome to this Operations Bridge Manager video tutorial. In this video, you will learn how to edit policies using the additional policy syntax documentation. Let me start with explaining when you need to look into the additional policy syntax documentation. OBM 2020-10 offers various policy templates for different use cases. These can be grouped into three areas. Policy templates for native monitoring on the left represents our traditional monitoring, which we offer since years or even decades. For nearly all of these policy templates, we already offer specialized flash-free editors, which you should use for editing such policies. Then we have the group of policies in the middle that allows you to create events or metrics from external sources. These are typically used when integrating data from other third-party vendors using our operations connector. And on the right, you see the group of advanced policies. To edit one of the 19 policy types with white background, use the raw policy editor and edit the policy syntax directly, for which you need to refer to the additional policy syntax documentation. This documentation is available as PDF from the OBM documentation portal. It contains, for each of the 19 policy types, a syntax table that describes the syntax of the policy. The syntax is divided into sections, and each section then explains the syntax in detail using UI references and examples. You can copy syntax examples either from the document into your policies or from example policies. The management pack that contains these example policies is part of OBM 2020.10. The examples use many options to illustrate the policy syntax, which is a great resource when editing your own policies. Now let's have a look at how you use the additional policy syntax documentation to edit a policy. Here you see the Operations Bridge Manager online help. To find the additional policy syntax documentation, go to the Administer topic, choose Monitoring, and Policy Templates. Here you find the documentation of all the different policy template types, ArcSight, Logger, configuration policies, database, and so on. And at the end of the list, you'll find the additional policy syntax documentation. Click on the link or download the PDF file. Then review the additional policy syntax documentation document. Review the purpose and the usage guidelines. They contain important information that you will need for the rest of the document as well. The document also tells you to use the online documentation together with this document. There's also a content pack, a management pack available, which contains example policies. There's a section about passwords, about data references, UUIDs and UUID generators, and a few troubleshooting tips. Then the section with the policy syntax table starts. Let's assume you want to edit an existing policy template, but you already have an existing template and don't want to use any of the example templates here. So go to the template that you want to edit. In this example, we want to edit a REST web service policy, the OBC message REST web service policy or per event REST web service policy. There's a version 1.0 currently on that system, and we can review it and view it using the raw policy editor. So this is the raw policy editor syntax. And we can see that it currently has exactly one rule called match all with key, which actually has no condition at all and sets the message type. So the description is a little bit incorrect, and we want to change this and also other settings. Using such a REST Web Service listener policy, you can send in any XML data you want and create OBM events out of it. In my case, I use this policy to receive events from an antivirus application and from a backup application. Both applications generate similar XML data and send it to this policy. Here you see some examples of the XML data that will be sent. From the antivirus application, I get events like the first two. Please note the categories of these events. The first one is sec TPOAS. The second one is sec TPAP. Events generated by the backup application will have the category backup. So my goal is to add rules to the OP event policy for these types of events. I also want to make sure that unmatched events are forwarded to the OBM server. Before we do it, have a look at the additional policy syntax documentation. Go to the syntax description of the policy you want to edit. In this case, the event from REST Web Service Listener policy. We want to make sure that this policy forwards unmatched events. This is configured in the event options part. So we jump to that section. We see here, this is the UI where I was able to configure unmatched events. And here I have the link to the documentation. The documentation takes me to a policy documentation of another policy type, but which has exactly the same event options part. Here, go to the options where the options are described and have a look at the existing documentation about how to forward unmatched events. So this documentation describes the setting, send unmatched events to OBM. And in the additional policy documentation, we find an example. And in the mapping table, we find what has to be written into the policy syntax if you want to forward events to the OMI or OBM server. So you can check that part here and then go back to the policy to edit the policy correspondingly. In this case, to forward unmatched events, it's a simple change of one value from 0 to 1. Additionally, we want to change the existing condition. The description is misleading, and it should only forward events that have a certain category. So to change a condition, go back to our REST Web Service Listener policies and have a look at the section where the condition is described. So here is a section that describes that we can have different rules, event generating rules with description, condition, and a set block. To learn more about the condition, we jump to the conditions section. Here you can read about how you set a condition. Please note that there are examples for different template types. So we choose the XML and REST Web Service Listener example. So what you can use as a condition depends, of course, on your input data. So here you see what kind of data will be sent to this REST Web Service Listener policy. And as you can see, the events sent there all have a category that starts with SEC, which stands for security events. We want to create a corresponding condition, not for each and every different security category, but for all the security categories together. First, we change the description. We want to match all with a certain category. And in this case, I'm going to use not the equal operator, but a match operator. So I want to match all events that have or start with the characters SAC. So these should be matched. And the documentation here tells you what operators are available and what would be the corresponding syntax element. So I use here event category matches SEC, and I want to now set the severity. Now for the set block, again, go back to your REST Web Service Listener policy template and go to the set block. So here under message conditions, we have set block. And here you see the description of how you can set event attributes. In the set event attributes section, you again have the UI reference and examples how to set attributes. Again, you can simply cut and copy and paste the severity setting here, and please note also other possible values. So copy and paste into your policy. We don't want to set the message type, so we can delete that. Now we have completed the first rule. Let's now have a look at how you add another rule. You can, for example, copy and paste an existing. For better visibility, you can move that to the right, but it's not necessary from a syntax perspective. Change the description. Here now we want to match for backup. Delete the condition ID. We'll come back to that in a minute. And adjust the match condition. Here for this backup events, we want to set the severity to minor. Now we have to set the condition ID. In the general section of the document, there was a topic about UUIDs and UUID generators. It explains that for several items like condition IDs, you need to create unique IDs. You can use here either UUID gen on Linux or Windows PowerShell on Windows. to generate such UUIDs. So in my case, I'm using a Linux system, and I simply type in UUID gen, and I copy the UUID into my policy. Now you can check the syntax of the policy by clicking on the check syntax icon, but this will also be done automatically when you save the policy. Syntax is okay, so save, and now you can deploy and test your policy. So here you see we have a new version. We can assign the policy to a test node. And then click assign to deploy. To test your policy, I recommend to use a view which shows the related CI to which you send events, as well as the operations agent, because errors in the policy will be reported to the operations agent CI. So here I have now a view which shows events from the operations agent and my node CI. Now I generate some test CI events. In my case, I can use curl command to test my REST web service listener policy. This curl command sends an event with a category backup to test one of our rules. It sends it to the node to which I deployed the policy. And here you see the event in the OBM event browser. You can check in the event details whether the correct rule and condition matched. Go to the more details and source info. And here you see in the match information that correct condition was used here to match this event. Also try to create test events for the other rules that you edited. So here we send a normal event for which we don't have a specific rule. But as we enabled forwarding unmatched events, it should also appear. And then we also send an event for the security rule. Here this has the category security and should match the corresponding rule. Again, you can go to the event details. Here you see condition is empty. This is an unmatched event. And for the security event, you can see that it matched the condition, match all with category security. So to summarize, use the additional policy syntax documentation to learn about the policy syntax of the policy template you want to edit. Review the syntax table to understand the structure and the sections of the policy. Then jump to the corresponding sections to see the UI reference, syntax examples, and the mapping table with possible values. For simple changes, just open the existing policy and edit it. For complex changes, I recommend that you use the provided policy template examples in OBM and copy and paste syntax parts from these examples into your existing or new policy template.